On behalf of 42,000 members of the State Bar of Georgia, I want to welcome you to the diversity program. Those of you here last night or at King and Spalding last night and got to hear Mayor Reed, got a pretty good taste of some things that are very important, not just for diversity in the legal profession, but for increasing opportunity across the board in our diverse society. Mayor Reed talked about the importance of his family, his grandmother, who worked as a domestic in Spartanburg and taught her grandchildren to pray. He talked about his parents who raised him with discipline and high expectations. He talked about a strong father in his life who was and remains a strong influence in guiding him to high goals and high success. And he talked about diversity not as some glittering generality or a moral imperative, but as a business case for all of us moving forward in a competitive global economy. Now, I'm not an illustration of diversity. I'm about as diverse as grits. I'm just a redneck truck wreck lawyer who happens to be State Bar President this year. So what do I know about diversity? Well, I would urge you all as we move forward to think about how far we've come. Travel back with me in time a little bit. It's August 1957 in a little Georgia town with one red light in a 12th grade school, and my daddy's the new principal. It's 10 miles from our home across the line in Alabama. During the pre-planning week, there are two 6-year-old boys about to start first grade who have the run of the campus, and we've got all the swings and slides and seesaws to ourselves, all the balls and bats to ourselves. And I expressed to my parents how good it is I've already made a friend who's going to be in first grade with me. After all, his daddy and my daddy were obviously the two most important people in the town because they both had the keychains and the keys to everything. And my parents said, William's not going to this school. Well, why is that? Well, he's going to the black school in the county seat. He'll be riding the school bus over there. Well, why is that? Well, that's just the way it is. And I said, Mama, you know that song we sing in Sunday school about Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world, yellow, red and yellow, black and white? Why is he going to a different school? Well, I never got a straight answer that I was satisfied with. Now, fast forward about 6 years, August 28th, 1963, Mentone, Alabama. We're getting ready to move to Chattanooga while my parents are packing up the truck. I go down to my uncle and aunt's house, and I'm watching TV with one of my cousins, watching a Western or something, I can't remember, and the news cuts in. And they have a scene from Washington, D.C. And I kind of recognize the scene because we've been there on vacation before, and there's the mall and the reflecting pool and the Lincoln Memorial. And this young black preacher gets up there and starts talking. And he says, I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will be judged not by the color of their skin, but the content of their character. And I thought back to William when I was starting first grade. And he said, I have a dream today that one day down in Alabama, hey, I'm in Alabama, with its vicious racist, its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. And I'm sitting there in Alabama, and my uncle, whose TV I'm watching, thinks George Wallace is a liberal who's too soft on maintaining segregation. And he continues, not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain in Georgia. Now, hey, I've been there. We went there for my birthday. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain in Tennessee. I'm sitting on Lookout Mountain, except down the Alabama part of it. We're about to move up to Chattanooga, where he's talking about. He says, let freedom ring from every hill and molehill in Mississippi. Your other speaker, I think he grew up in Mississippi. We had the opportunity to have lunch together a few months ago. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. Now, he got my attention. At 12, in my heart, I knew that he was right. At 12, I also knew in my gut I better shut my mouth around some folks around me. But it was clear that he was right. Now fast forward again, 4 years to 1967. By then we moved to Douglasville, out here west of Atlanta, except it wasn't part of the metro area then. It was just another redneck town in Georgia, out on the path of what was going to be I-20. And a court order came down about a month before school started. It said the white and black schools in the town would be combined when school started. And I was 16, just got a new driver's license. I just wanted to have fun, you know. And we had a meeting of the white student council officers around a ping pong table in the basement at my house. But what are we going to do to keep some of our friends from making trouble? Now, we were not advanced enough to think about inviting the black student council officers. It never crossed our minds in 1967. But we came up with a plan. We basically made a list of those who were going to be most likely to cause trouble, and we'd call them, use a little reverse psychology, and say, hey, Bill, Bob, did you hear about that? The ones that spouted off a bunch of venom, we'd let them talk until they ran out of steam and say, well, you know, that's just what they want you to do. And they said, I never thought about that, and they never caused any trouble, and it came off fairly well. But it's a long way from 1967 to today. In the midst of that, I remember sitting there with my best friend and saying, you know, in 100 years, all this race stuff isn't going to matter. We're going to be so far beyond that it just won't be considered relevant. And to my children, it's pretty much not relevant. And in another 66 years, on the path we're going, it probably won't be. We've come a long way in the last 44 years, but we've got a long way still to go. Now, there are ways in which racial disparity continues to be a problem, and not so much for the people in this room who are talking about competing for the business of Fortune 500 corporations. Right now, I'm serving on the Criminal Justice Reform Council in the state of Georgia. The disparity in incarceration rates is huge. Young black males are 7 times more likely than young white males to go to prison. And the career path, the life path when that happens is terrible. Now, one of the things that we're looking at is accountability courts to try to salvage lives of people who are caught in drugs and addiction and crime at the front end, before they're incarcerated, before they get onto that path where the life outcomes just don't get very good. Now, another aspect of this, the disparity in rates of children born out of wedlock is not encouraging. And what are the causes of that? There are a bunch of causes, and we all have different views of that. But when it happens, partly because some of the young black males are caught up in negative behavior that makes them either physically or economically or socially unavailable in the groups that are most likely to be impacted by that, or because of cultural influences that make people think it's cool to be a baby mama. Those children have reduced life expectations and life outcomes. The correlation between a child being born out of wedlock and a child having reduced educational and occupational outcomes is huge. We as a profession need to figure out what we can do to help bend that curve. I don't have all the answers by a long shot. But I think as we go forward in diversity in the profession, we shouldn't forget those who are left behind. Now, you say, well, we know that there are people who are born out of wedlock who have good outcomes. I know. I hired one of them in my office this summer. But we can't ignore those issues. When we listened to Mayor Reed last night, it was so clear the importance of family and church and community and the high expectations that were held up for him And then he told us, let's make the business case for diversity. Let's be practical. Thank you for listening to this Redneck Truck Wreck Lawyer. God bless you all.